and opinions of the writer. So the writer is writing the entire story from the view of a different person, and it's her story. So while they're narrating that story, the author can come in and give her or his viewpoints. Alright, persona is strongly linked to the narrative voice. Yes, it's synonym. You create a narrative voice and it can be also called a persona. Are you following? Is it clear so far? Okay. When we are convinced by the authenticity of the voice, we are able to empathize with the situation in the piece of writing. Yes, the narrator's voice. Alright, we kind of associate with it. If it's authentic, only then we can actually understand what it's saying. When a writer is able to invoke that empathy in the reader, your writing is effective. So your narrative should create an emotional feeling to the reader, all right, especially of that of empathy. In this section, we explore how writers create a distinctive voice that we can almost hear speaking to us from the page. Just as we sometimes feel we could almost reach into a painting and touch something we see. Alright? Now let's see. There's an author who creates the persona and the narrator. Then that narrator can be part of the story, an omniscient narrator, or could be the character in the story. For example, I don't know if you've heard, it was quite recent. There was a second sequel to 300. If you've heard of that movie. Have you heard of the movie 300? No. Okay, it's a war-based movie. There's a lot of barbaric war happening in the times of the Greeks, and how the Romans were captured. A lot of stuff happening there. So the second sequel which came out was the entire story was based on the narration of a queen. Alright, she's telling, like the first movie was about how this man, the Spartan, alright, with just 300 soldiers went out to conquer one of the fights, alright, which was one of the world's biggest wars, and he was killed in the process, alright, and meanwhile, the second movie talks about this entire narration by his wife, the person who died in the first movie, alright, but they've shown it so beautifully that in the second movie, it's like he's not dead still. In one part, he's fighting his war, and simultaneously there's so many other things happening. Alright, somebody else has sent out ships for the war from the other side of the attack. This is happening, that is happening. A lot of these things are happening simultaneously with the fight of the Spartans. Alright, so the first movie was showing only the fight which happened by the Spartans itself, only that. They didn't tell us what was happening simultaneously with the other king or the other area, what happened, how did they react. But here, the wife's narration creates such an impact that she's been preparing for this war ever since. And though her husband had gone out and has died in the process, she will now come back as an avenger. She will want to take revenge for her husband's death. So she is back with a fleet of ships, and she powers the key. All right. So the entire time she is narrating, and for a fraction of a second we feel that the narrator has created such a bond between the entire movie that when it gets reflected that the queen was the narrator, it was a complete twist. All right. So that's what happens when you give your narrator a very important character in the novel or movie or story or however it is. Is that clear? All right, so here we have an extract from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time. Yes, I would like you to read it.
It was 7 minutes after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn in front of Mrs. Shear's house. Its eyes were closed. It looked as if it was running on its side, the way dogs run when they think they are chasing a cat in a dream. But the dog was not running or asleep. The dog was dead. There was a garden fork sticking out of the dog. The points of the fork must have gone all the way through the dog and into the ground because the fork had not fallen over. I decided that the dog was probably killed with the fork because I could not see any other wounds in the dog, and I do not think you would stick a garden fork into a dog after it had died for some other reason, like cancer for example, or a road accident. But I could not be certain about this. I went through Mrs. Shear's gate, closing it behind me. I walked onto her lawn and knelt beside the dog. I put my hand on the muzzle of the dog. It was still warm. The dog was called Wellington. It belonged to Mrs. Shears, who was our friend. She lived on the opposite side of the road, 2 houses to the left. Wellington was a poodle, not one of the small poodles that have hairstyles, but a big poodle. It had curly black fur. When you got close, you could see the skin underneath the fur was a very pale yellow, like chicken. I stroked Wellington and wondered who had killed him and why.
Yes, so here in the persona, the narrator is giving us this, all right, has given us precise implication of the time and shows that they're concerned about the details, all right. The tone is clinical, like they're describing the neighbor's dead dog without any emotion, all right. There's no emotion, there's just a very clear description of what has happened, but there's no emotional attachment towards it. And for being a neighbor, you feel quite different. Again, it's the first person perspective, which allows the reader to appreciate the world through the perspective of someone with autism. All right. Yes. Continue reading, Riza.
My name is Christopher John Francis Boone. I know all the countries of the world and their